Yeah, Simon. So Rabbi Simon Jacobson, part three. Hopefully the final part. Um, but this is just a continuation of our listening to the ramblings of the dangerous ramblings, I might add, of Rabbi Simon Jacobson, who is trying to prove to atheists that God exists, but his presupposition, his axiomatically, God exists to him. So there's if when I come to talk to Rabbi Simon Jacobson and I tell him God is impossible, God is unnecessary, and God is unevidenced. That's essentially the three, exactly the same three questions that I posed to Darth Dawkins if you watched part two. Nevertheless, I think it's time for us to introduce the good rabbi. Here he is. And we can just pick up from where we left off yesterday.
The brain, the size of the palm of my hand, a little bigger. Whatever we know, everyone knows that there's so much more that it's complete mystery usually. That doesn't mean we can't do many things, but it means that our tools that we've had till now are limited, and there are many more other tools. So now let's talk about God. Let's talk about God now.
Well, I'm okay talking about God, it's Rabbi, if you were at least to define what this God is, because it seems that there's a problem with definition. I have a definition of God, and you have a definition of God. And if you'd have watched yesterday's rerun or a reaction to a retro with Gary Milne, you'd see that he has a definition of God. So, without a common definition, I'm going to still insist that God is impossible. I'm still going to insist God is unnecessary. And I'm still going to insist that God is unevidenced.
I go back to the question. If all this I've said now, and this does not require any faith, does not require any belief, does not require any religion, everything I've said till now. It requires simple intelligence dictates that there's more down the rabbit hole, as I said, beneath the surface. Much, much more. And if there's an unconscious, there's definitely an unconscious. And it goes on and on and on.
There's an unconscious, there's an unconscious, there's an unconscious and a non-unconscious. There's a conscious and sorry, I'm not following him.
So then, why is it when it comes to God, are we so simplistic?
Because you haven't defined your God yet. You haven't proven your God yet. You haven't shown any evidence. You haven't even shown that your God is necessary. You haven't shown that your God is even possible.
Not applying the same type of intelligence. Here we're talking the possibility. I say possibility only because
What an asshole this guy is.
Accept there's a God, but I only say it to satisfy the objective inquiry here. So if the possibility that a God exists would mean...
This is the big mistake. Because God is impossible. I've said it before. I'm going to say it again. That this guy, if he says, when he says, if there's a possibility that God exists, well, I'm taking that possibility out off the table. There's no possibility that God exists. You can't prove me wrong at all. Because he has no evidence to counter my my position of there being absolutely nothing. What he's talking about is a nothing burger. And a nothing burger is just that. There's nothing, there's no foundation. Nothing. but he still uses it axiomatically. He still uses that God exists axiomatically without in any way making any sense when explaining his God. He doesn't know. He doesn't know shit.
That there's a creator that put all this in place, and all this complexity, as deep as it goes, has something even deeper that when you cut to the core, you'll find that highest reality called the divine source of it all.
Oh yeah. Now this is something that he's just claiming. That is a huge major claim on your part, Rabbi Simon Jacobson. You got any backup for that? Anything at all? Because what you're talking about now is it sounds like you're just pulling it out of thin air. Divine. You haven't divine. Where do we get divine from? What does it even mean? Without defining your God. You haven't done that once yet.
That's so illogical. I don't find that illogical at all.
Well, I do. There's no possibility that a God exists. And not every scientist is going to say, well, maybe a God exists. You're gaslighting. You're lying. And that really annoys me.
I mean, even people who don't have belief in faith took some psychedelics, and they all came back with the same conclusion, that there's some higher force behind it all.
Okay, so without psychedelics, there's no God. No higher force, no nothing. But with psychedelics, all of a sudden there's a God. This is his best argument. This is Rabbi Simon Jacobson's argument, that people who did not have God, once they took psychedelics, they discovered God. This is Rabbi Simon Jacobson's finest argument for God. Man, that's weak. Simon, weak.
You know how many people came to believe in God because of LSD? Or because of some...
And that's something to promote? Are you out of your mind, dude?
Other hallucinogens and other psychedelic experiences? I'm not suggesting that's a proof, but I'm suggesting...
Well, then what is it? Okay, if it's not a proof, it's a...
If hundreds, thousands and thousands of people came to realize, what they come to realize, that which any logic can tell you, that there's a lot more going on behind the scenes. As a matter of...
Behind the scenes of what? What do you mean there's a lot more going on behind the scenes? You're just sort of just circling. You never get to the point. There's a lot more going on behind the scenes. That's uninformative.
In fact, that's far more real than what we see.
It's uninformative, sorry. A lot more going on behind the scenes that we see. I mean, I don't buy it. I don't see why anybody else would buy it, because you're not providing any detail. You're just making an absurd claim.
So if I were to ask you now a question, I started out the process of elimination, working our way from the bottom up, what we see with our eyes. Now that we know what we know scientifically, and I'm not even discussing God for a moment, what is more real, the subatomic particles that shape everything in existence, or the objects that we see with our eyes? I'll put it this way, the DNA in your body, or the physical body that you have that you see in the mirror?
That's the stupid question. And he's one of the highlights of stupid questions of the century. Your DNA in your body and you.
The answer is obvious. What you see is just the surface level.
What you see in the mirror is the surface level, but inside your DNA, there's information which you don't see. Well, that's bullshit, because if you don't see it, we wouldn't know it was there. And sure, you can't see it with your naked eye, duh, but you can see it through a microscope or whatever instrument they use to see or determine the makeup of the DNA. I don't know what it is, but you still haven't got anywhere close to convincing anybody that your God or that a God can even possibly exist. There's no reason yet that you've given for a God to exist when we've both acknowledged that reality exists, but you are saying that God exists on the same plane as reality, outside of reality, but on the same plane. And somehow your God can communicate with you. This God is so big, this universe, remember, the cosmos is it's so unimaginably massive that you still think that you can throw a conscious, intelligent mind outside of, with no form, hanging around outside of the cosmos, directing its attention at you. Absolute gobbledygook. Simon, when are you going to... You've been doing this for, I'm sure, a very long time. Have you been talking the same nonsense for maybe 30 years? Seriously? And people listen to you? Well, I'm listening to you, but man, I'm reacting. Not just listening. You won't let anybody react in your lecture there, which is fine. But I'm reacting now.
Tip of the iceberg. Just because you're comfortable with it and you see it all the time doesn't mean that is the most real aspect. It's like saying, what's more real, the symptom or the cause? The symptom you see. Someone said, I have a toothache, I have a headache. Yeah, obviously you feel it and you know it's very real. But what is real? The toothache or what's causing the toothache to take? And the cause is always invisible.
That's such crap. If you've got a toothache, you probably have a cavity. A cavity just doesn't happen overnight. I'm sure it takes time for a cavity to get large enough for you to feel it, for it to hurt. So this guy is missing everything. He's I think he's wearing sort of opaque glasses. His cult does not allow him to see reality for what it really is. That's what I'm speculating here.
Well, not always, most of the time. So what you conclude from this is a very interesting reverse hypothesis, and that is that the more visible it is, maybe the less real it is, and the more invisible it is.
The more visible it is, the less real it is. And the more invisible it is,
the more real it is.
The more real it is. Okay, let's try let's try and understand this. The more visible it is, the less real it is. The more invisible it is, the more real it is. Can we break down logically what this means? No, we can't. It's garbage. It's gibberish. It's word salad. Nonsense. Simon.
So reality is not defined by us.
Of course not. Reality is reality. You don't have to define reality. Reality is what is. That's the definition. That's the definition. Reality is what it is. There's no definition for it, other than reality is what it is.
Defined by the causes that shape us. And we know clearly that everything in existence has causes. That's the whole basis of science. So even though no one's ever seen gravity, but you see the impact of gravity. So clearly gravity...
Right. Okay. Let's stop right there. We've never seen gravity, but we've seen the impact of gravity. We've never seen God, but we've never seen the impact of God either. right? So if you could say we've never seen God, but we've seen the impact of God, and you can come up with something convincing, then maybe you've got something to put on the table. But right now, it's I've never seen God, and I have never seen any evidence for God. That's what you're saying. Well, that's what we all know. I mean, it's not even debatable.
Gravity is a force. Electromagnetism, the other two, nuclear strong force, the weak force. These are energies you've never seen.
Bullshit. They've been measured. What do you mean they've never seen? Are you setting a criterion that only things that can be seen with the visible light in the visible light spectrum exist, and everything else like electromagnetism, which cannot be seen with the naked eye but can be evidenced? What is, I don't understand what the difference is. It's real. Electromagnetism is real, right? And the light and the light coming on when you switch on the electric circuit is real. You can see it. You can't see the electricity, but you can see the effects of the electricity. So yeah, they're both real. This man, Simon, he's talking, he's lying to you. Look, he's lying. He's looking right at you, and he's lying. Although he's got these shifty eyes, which kind of give it away that he is lying. And it's not his fault, okay? Because when he was learning these stories, he was learning them from a man who looks very similar to him and who acted very similar to the way he's acting now. So he had many years to watch how these stories are told, and he's had many years to understand the shifty eye because it is just a business, and the shifty eye is a projection that he knows is just spinning a yarn, as it were, but spinning a yarn deceptively because he wants you to believe it as being true. And he's still trying to somehow crowbar his God into the conversation. But to no avail, there's no definition.
Have you ever seen electricity?
Oh,
You sure know it exists. You touch, God forbid, a live wire, you're going to feel it. You look at appliances, you look at the world lit up, alive, energized, something's energizing it. But what does electricity look like?
So it's real. It's energizing it, so it's real. It's energy. Because energy is all that there is.
Can you tell me? I know the images we have looks like lightning bolts. We envision it as some type of flow, but it's not subject to the senses. But it's undeniable, and we can generate it, and we can regulate it, and we can control it.
So it is real. Hello?
Where does water come from? You ever think about water? So we know the water that comes into our houses do not originate in the pipes.
He must think that everybody was just like born yesterday and they know absolutely nothing, and they come into his lectures and to be educated about everything. So just imagine somebody walking in here and relying on this guy for basic general knowledge. And here he's talking about he never actually comes to make a point. He always thinks he's getting closer. He says he's going to get closer, and then he moves on to something else. Because the electricity he just spoke about, he said something about you don't see electricity, but you see the appliances and water. What about water? You know, let me just shut up.
Obviously.
Sorry.
Right? They originate, the pipes are pumping water from arteries, water mains that lie under the ground, right? Where do those water mains lead you to reservoirs that can be hundreds of miles away? New York's reservoirs are hundreds of miles from here. They gather water through rainwater and other sources, okay? Mm-hmm. But where does the water come from? Where does rainwater come from? So rainwater can be traced to the seas. It's an evaporation that creates the clouds, etc., etc. And where do the seas get their water from? So that goes back to deep under the ground of the seas, you have the sources of springs, live springs, that come from the center of the earth, which, by the way, is complete fire and lava, everything antithetical to water. Can you explain how the belly of the earth, which is heat that's comparable to the heat of the sun, and creating volcanic eruptions,
it's molten iron, isn't it?
Water to come when water is. So the answer is that once it cools off, the lava turns into water, whatever, all the different theories. But how many of us have even traced it all the way back to the source? We trace it. We know, we're pretty happy if you get water.
Traced what back to the source? Traced water back to the source? Hydrogen and oxygen. Hydrogen has been around since almost the beginning. And oxygen, well, has been around for a very long time. So what source are you talking about? Which particular supernova are you referring to, Simon?
Bottled water or water coming out of your faucet with a filter, no filter, that's about it. I'm just trying to point out how we are really very superficial people. And I include myself. We worship what we see. We're seduced by our senses. You can hear every truth in the world, and you're standing outside, and a beautiful woman walks by, or another sight, you will be attracted by it. It doesn't matter what you're thinking about.
So, what's your point? So fucking what? You can just as easily refocus from what you were distracted by as focusing on the distraction, but you could just very easily refocus. So what is your point when you say you get distracted? So you get distracted. In fact, if you were really, 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 really focused, you wouldn't get distracted. So don't bullshit and say that you're focused.
Because we are people of senses. We are sensory creatures who value what we see, what we hear, we taste, touch, and smell. We would not have a $1 trillion advertising industry or $1 billion advertising industry and everyone vying for our attention in one way or another if it didn't have power. We're hip.
So fucking what? This is marketing. This guy himself, he's such a fucking hypocrite. He's marketing his nonsense here in this lecture. Listen to him. Listen to all the crap he talks. Listen to all the gobbledygook he spews. And then he talks about how marketing works. In the material world, of course, not in his spiritual world. Yeah, no, different.
Hypnotized by this world. Let's be honest. So
no, I'm not hypnotized by this world. Are you? Let's be honest. I'm not hypnotized by this world, and I'm being honest. What are you talking about, Simon? Rabbi Simon?
Of things, and the sources of things may intrigue us. Everybody wants to know what makes a clock tick. We all like to take things apart, but with a limit. So the search for God is actually the greatest search in history because you're searching for the root of it all.
The search for God is the greatest search in history because you're searching for the root of it all. You see? He's already presupposing that God exists and God is the root, and he hasn't come up with anything that backs it up. Anything other than his specious claim.
And the people who seriously searched for it, starting from Abraham, they never stopped.
Why start from Abraham? That doesn't make sense. If you're going to search for God, God was around before Abraham. We don't need Abraham. We don't even need any text. Because if God actually exists, and you can only know about the existence of God through human text, then I would get very suspicious about what you're saying. I would question your credibility and your honesty, Rabbi Simon Jacobson. Because now you're gaslighting, or you're what's a good word? You non sequitoring.
This is what I describe now at length is basically Abraham's journey. He grew up in a pagan home.
Abraham's journey. Who's Abraham? Why don't you tell us who Abraham is and why he's significant? Who cares about Abraham? Who gives a shit about Abraham? And besides, who was following him around with a pen and paper and taking notes on his journey? That's a problem with all of these stories. They never account for who actually writes the story down or gets it down in some kind of print so that we can preserve it. He never talks about that. He'll just talk about this, I don't know, mythical Abraham.
In a pagan world. You know what they worship? They worship.
Abraham's parents. Now whoever Abraham is, his parents are pagan. Did you see how angry he looks at when he says pagan? Now in a pagan world, what?
Worshipped idols.
Oh, they worshipped idols. I'm so glad I was sitting down. That is horrible news. Pagans worshipped idols? Are you kidding me? Whew. Rabbi, tell us more.
They worshipped gods that they could see. Maimonides has a fascinating introduction to the laws of idolatry in his book Mishnah Torah that describes how did people become idol worshippers.
Laws of idolatry? It's just you can't make this up, man. Laws of idolatry.
And his answer, the way he explains it is brilliant. It's fascinating. That initially Adam and Eve knew there was some invisible force, reality that put everything here.
And they knew that how? Because they're intelligent and they questioned everything. They sat over the kitchen table at dinner or after dinner, and they discussed where they came from.
But then human beings felt uncomfortable with looking for invisible because we want something visible. So they began to attribute to stars. That's why it's called star worship. Because stars, they didn't say stars are God. They said stars are God's handiwork. They're God's instruments.
And so they worship them. So then why don't you worship the planet Earth, if that's the case? Why don't you worship the sun? If that's God's handiwork, is the sun, which is what gives you energy, which is what gives you life, why don't you worship the sun? You don't even have to make an idol of the sun. You can just worship the sun. It's there. God, why do you make things so complicated, Rabbi Simon Jacobson and his cult?
And they began to identify with stars. But stars are very far away. So
there's one star that's a lot closer than the others. Just saying.
Began to identify with trees and objects on Earth.
Okay, so he's saying that stars are very far away, so praying to them was it's God's work. It's God's work, but praying to them was somehow ineffective. So they turned to trees and something on Earth. Let's hear.
That they said correspond to different constellations and stars. And then came the next level of the...
So trees and natural things that correspond to constellations of stars.
The what do we call it? The con artists and the...
And then the con artists are the charlatans. I think he's talking about religion here.
Charlatans who said, you know what, people are worshiping that. Let's create a building around certain trees and around certain objects, and we'll sell entrance fee. We'll make...
So you take a god, you build a building around it, and you charge people to come in and worship the god. Huh. Not a bad business. If it's like the mega church of today. You know, God is, or the worshiper, the thing, the idol is Joel Osteen, and the building is the megachurch, and you get charged entrance fee. That's what he's talking about, isn't he? Seems to work in America.
Make some money on it. And here, slowly, generation by generation, evolved. Instead of accepting that the source of it all is invisible and beyond you, we want to.
Did you hear that? Instead of accepting that the invisible, the source of everything is invisible and beyond you, you have to accept that. That the source of everything is invisible and beyond you. I don't see how that makes any. Why should I accept that? I think that's the basis, the ground level, the entry level axiom or foundation that you have to accept when you enter this man's cult.
Have a god or some type of deity that we can relate to, a tree,
a god or some type of deity, a tree,
a sun, a moon.
A sun. You said it. There's your God. If you truly were honest, you would worship the star that God created and that gives you life. That's if you were honest and you really, really wanted to worship what was important. You wouldn't have to make up a story about how the star got there. All you have to do is read a science book, watch Neil deGrasse Tyson, watch astrophysicists like Dr. Becky or Lawrence Krauss. Actually, he's a theoretical physicist.
Other objects. So it didn't begin foolishly, someone's going to just bow down to a stone or to a tree. These became symbols of God's hand. But then the symbols became God, and God was forgotten. Comes Abraham, in his intelligence, even as a child, recognizes there's no way that all these objects, which are just like me and you, and they're mortal, and they will die, and they're subject to all the erosion and the effects of a mortal universe, can be the source of it all. Like I said earlier, the world does not dictate that it's a source. So he came to start extrapolating. So where is it? He went out to the meadows, looked up to the heavens. First he said the sun, the moon. No, but the sun and moon are just extension of this universe.
Well, it's totally getting fucking boring. So I want to reach out and recognize you guys in the chat. Paul, Tyler. How you guys doing? Thank you for hanging in with us, with me. I think this guy's full of bullshit. What do you think? He calls himself Rabbi, which is kind of an insult. In my opinion, I would hate to be referred to as Rabbi. It's like I'd feel, just like I felt all my life about rabbis, they lie. They're selling snake oil. The whole story, the whole everything about what they say is nonsense, and they never tie it up to convincing me and anyone else that I know who thinks like me. They never convince us that their God is even possible, never mind actually exists.
The sun sets, the moon sets. He realized they're all the same, limited. And then he came to...
They're all the same, limited. What do you mean? They all do... They do what they do. That's reality. No matter what you think, no matter what you believe, Simon, reality still continues without your conceptions, ideas.
The big realization that took him many years to come to realize. That's the other way around. He's looking for God. He's looking for God on his terms. He realized he has to...
Of course he is. Why not? Who do you think... Firstly, God doesn't exist. So of course he's going to look for God on his terms. Whose terms is he going to look at? Whose terms is he going to look after God? On whose terms, if not his own? That's a stupid thing to say. Another stupid Simon statement. Damn.
So stop looking. Shut down all your senses and God will emerge. That's what he came to realize.
Shut down all your senses and God will emerge. That's what he came to realize. What clown is he even talking about? And it was so important to this Simon guy that he's got to repeat that silly story in a lecture to adults. I think they're adults. I'm sure they're adults. I don't think kids would last 5 minutes listening to this guy. They'd fall asleep or just run away.
Because as I said earlier, the part cannot dictate what the whole is like. How could a creature discover the creator?
Right, which is what you are. You're a creature. How can you discover your creator? You've just admitted that you have absolutely no idea about whether the creator exists, because you're just a creature. You can't discover your creator, so you're just guessing that you were created, right? Right, Simon? Even though every single atom inside your body was created in a star, in a supernova, in an explosion, the likes of which you can't even imagine. It was so hot. It was so hot that the lighter elements like helium and hydrogen, it was so hot that the heavy elements, I should say, were able to be put together and emerge from that heat source. That's how it works. That's all you are, Simon. You're just a whole bunch of atoms, and the atoms inside of you will exist eternally. What do you think of that? Isn't that mind-blowing? The atoms inside of you have existed eternally, and when they break down when your body breaks down and all the atoms become free, they still will exist. So, question for you, Simon, Rabbi Simon, is: does anything ever die? Is there really such a thing as death? Philosophical death, yeah. But is there really physical death? I don't think so.
You can extrapolate, you can figure out there must be something, but how could you relate to the Creator? Only by shutting down his own tools. So think.
Yeah, exactly. You can only relate to a Creator if you shut down your faculties of reason. You shut down your system of logic and of critical thinking. Yeah, shut them all down. You can come to a Creator. Promise you can. And I'll back this guy up.
Think of this way: shut down your senses.
Shut down your senses.
Your sight, sound, taste, touch, and smell. What do you?
Right. So yeah, it's dark. You can't see. You can't taste or smell or anything. It's just like dark. And then?
What are you going to be left with? So initially the thought may be daunting, may be frightening. You think you disappear. You won't disappear. You'll be left with yourself. That's not shaped by... and.
It's no different than being at night in a very quiet, dark bedroom where it's very silent and there's no light. You're lying there and you're with yourself.
And defined by senses. When's the last time you tried that? Try it out.
Then what?
No, you can't try it out right now because you need to. Because if you want to hear what I'm going to say, you can't shut your sound. But try it out. just a total silence where you have all your senses shut down, if possible. You're going to start hearing yourself, a voice within. Abraham came to realize if he wants to...
What a charlatan this guy is. He's telling you that if you shut down all your senses, you're going to start hearing a voice within yourself. And then he jumps into Abraham, the story of Abraham, where I guess Abraham heard a voice within himself. Tell me if I'm wrong. Let's do it.
To find God, he has to allow God find him. He has to shut down, which we call humility, complete silence. Instead of aggressively trying to find God like we find other things in life, like finding a loaf of bread or finding an answer to our problem.
Aggressively finding other things in life, like finding a loaf of bread. That's it's aggressive. Is that an aggressive thing to do? Find a loaf of bread? How many of you out there have aggressively found a loaf of bread? Anyone? Whoa. A lot more than I expected. Just kidding.
Realize, let me shut everything down, and the essence of it all, the core of it all will emerge. And that's when he first discovered God. Or you could say...
So he shut everything down, and he heard voices, and he discovered God. That's a very familiar story, isn't it?
God discovered him. And that was the relationship. So what are we talking about now? What kind of entity is this?
It's an imaginary entity. It's a conceptual entity. And it is an idea. That's it.
Can't use human tools to define the entity.
Now you can use human tools even though he's a human. I wonder what he's going to come up with that's possible to use as a human.
Entity called the divine, but we could extrapolate. And we can shut down our tools and then discover realities that we never thought are possible. Actually, quantum mechanics is a very good example for this type of stuff. Because it's when you shut down your conventional logical tools is when you come to realize there are other type of realities that you would not have seen otherwise. So it comes down to this using...
Hey, Tom. Welcome to the chat room. You guys are all free to... Oh, shit. I didn't even put the... my bad. I didn't put the link. I'll stick it in there right now. You're all welcome to join in the room and make fun of this guy as well. Or comment on what he's saying. I'm finding what he's saying pretty damn offensive. Hold on a sec. I just want to pin this. All right. There you go. Let's carry on.
Now, the Maimonides term, he says God. Well, before I go there, let me just say the following. So Richard Dawkins and the other atheists, their big statement, everyone always asks like this. Okay, you say nothing can create itself. Fine. That means there's a God that created everything. If nothing can create itself, then who created God? That's the next question they always ask. So everything has a cause, fine. We have parents, our parents had parents. Everything in this world evolved from one state of being, another state of being, another state of being. But then who created the first state of being? God? So who created God? You just said nothing can create itself. This is the brilliant argument of atheists. Now, if you think about it...
He hasn't stated an argument. He said atheists ask questions. Who created God? That is the... Okay, or maybe I'm not... Maybe there's a brilliant argument coming up right now.
For a few minutes, you realize that the response is very obvious. Obviously, if you're just carrying over the question from objects to God, and God is just another extension of us, of course, then the question is, who created God? But the real conclusion, this is what Abraham came to, and now I'm using Maimonides' words, is that God is a reality, an existence that's like none other.
Ha 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 ha. God is a reality and an existence like none other. Just accept that, okay? Because it's true. Yeah, you got to accept that. You know, I'm a very credible person. I have a rabbi, I have the word Rabbi before my name. This is absurd. This is almost medieval talk. This is the way they used to teach medieval people. They used to talk nonsense to them, and the kids used to, and the audience used to say, "He looks like he's got a beard, so he must be a bushy beard. He must be a very intelligent guy." And they actually believe this nonsense.
If God is an existence like ours, then obviously something has.
You see, if God, if he's everything about his whole spiel, his whole shtick, is if.
To create it as well, because nothing can exist on its own. And therefore you have the expressions, three main expressions that describe as best as possible. The one is Maimonides' words, that God is a bilti mitzias nimtza, which means a non-existential existence.
God is a non-existential existence. See, they're making up statements and phrases that, although they sound, highfalutin with all these big words, they mean absolutely nothing. They can't. The whole phrase implodes on itself.
Let me explain. It means you cannot say God exists, because then you would suggest that God exists like we exist. You can't say God does not exist, so you say God exists, but not in an existence that we can even conceive of.
That's so stupid. I'd just like to recognize Christ brings a sword. Welcome. Can a computer understand a human? How can a creation understand the creator? Well, there's no creator. A creator doesn't exist. A creator is impossible. So we discount a creator in real life. Okay, we're listening to this guy's lies and gaslightings, but we all know that a creator or God is just a concept. It's impossible in reality for there to be a creator. We all know that, but this guy seems to want to push it. I think it's his job. I think he relies on it for his paycheck.
So we exist because we manifest in certain ways. Like I said earlier, if I told you that there's a white wall right here, all you need to do is come and look at it. What happens if I told you there's a white wall outside? You have to believe it's true. Maybe it's not. You would need.
It doesn't matter. It's possible. This is where I think these guys get everything wrong. If you say to me, like he just said, if there's a white wall outside, if I told you there was a white wall outside, you'd have to come and look to see if it's a white wall outside, or you just have to believe that there's a white wall outside. What I said, and which is fine. Either way, doesn't matter, because it is possible for there to be a white wall outside. Okay, it's possible. God is impossible. So for him to invoke something that is impossible and then compare it to the to a possibility that a God exists under the same conditions, using the same rules, is disingenuous. You can't do that. You can't say, well, I'm going to tell you something and just believe it. When it comes to materialism, versus I'm going to tell you something and I want you to just believe it when it comes to gobbledygook. They're two different animals. Well, one's an animal and one's a non-existent nothing.
You need proof for it to exist. A non-existential existence doesn't need proof, because proof itself is created by that non-existential existence. So in other words,
non-existential existence, that makes no sense. Non-existential existence. I'm going to write that down in the chat there. Non-existential existential existence. What does this mean? Guess I should learn to type, huh? There we go. Non-existential existence. What does this mean? There we go.
What we can extrapolate is that a creator would be nothing like we are.
That's right. Because we exist. This guy is he's digging himself a huge hole. He's falling right into it. Can you believe it? I mean, he doesn't see it. Hello, CCK. But this guy doesn't see it at all. He's digging himself a deeper and deeper and deeper hole.
So anything we're subject to, which includes having a cause, means the creator would have no cause.
No! Wrong! That's a ridiculous conclusion. I want you to listen to that again.
So we exist because we manifest in certain ways. Like I said earlier, if I told you that there's a white wall right here, all you need to do is come and look at it. What happens if I told you there's a white wall outside? You have to believe it's true. Maybe it's not.
Doesn't matter.
You would need proof for it to exist. A non-existential existence doesn't need proof.
A non-existential existence doesn't need proof. Rabbi. A non-existential existence doesn't need proof. Explain me. Explain me, baby. Non-existential existence doesn't need proof. Garbaz, gibberish, gobbledygook.
Because proof itself is created by that non-existential existence. So in other
Proof itself is created by that non-existential existence. Is anybody listening to what this guy says? And how much nonsense it is?
In other words, what we can extrapolate is that a creator would be nothing like we are. So anything we're
Again, of course, because we exist and a creator does not exist. So he's right there.
subject to, which includes having a cause, means the creator would have no cause. Or as another expression that's used, mitziyuse matzmuse.
The creator would have no cause. Just throw it out there. Okay? Listen, Mr. Smarty Pants. I know you're a critical thinker, and I know that, and this is for all of you viewers out there. I'm addressing you. I know you're a critical thinker. I know you rely on reason and being rational, logical, and using your common sense. But the creator doesn't have to be created. That's all you need to know.
His cause is himself. He causes his own existence.
A creator doesn't have to be created because he causes his own existence. Okay, so if you cause your own existence, then there has to be a time in order for that cause of existence to be to proceed. There has to be a time when you don't exist. So you don't exist, and then you cause your own existence. Is that how it works? So there's a period before you cause your own existence that there's nothing, there's no existence. Is this what you're trying to peddle here, Mr. Snake Oil Salesman?
His existence is a result of his being. By us, it's the other way around. Our being is a result of our existence. His existence is a result of his reality. So what does that reality mean? It means it's real, not because it's provable, not because it's witnessed. It's real because it's real.
It's real because it's real. It's not because it's witnessed, not because it's there's proof. It's real because it's real. See? Now, if that is isn't circular argument, or if that isn't a circular statement, then I don't know what is. Rabbi Simon Jacobson says it's real because it's real. God is real because God is real. That's it. Accept it. You have to accept it because there's no other choice, according to this rabbi.
Or to use the word that God said to Moses when he asked him, tell me your name, he said, Eya asher Eya, I am who I am, which of course is cryptic. What does that mean?
Actually, it's not cryptic. I am who I am. We all say that. I am. I think. I think, therefore I am. That's the same thing. I know I exist. And why he talks about Moses, who's a myth, on some mountain from a fantasy literature piece of writing, is beyond me. He already loses credibility when he starts to quote from scripture, from man-made stuff. He loses all credibility with me.
Maimonides defines it. It means I am because I am. Nothing is because it is. Everything is because something put it there. So in effect, what we discover is that the truth is you cannot say God exists, because exists is meant in terms, when we say exists, it means.
Did you hear that? The truth is, he says, you cannot say that God exists. Okay, Gary Milne, I would like to introduce you to Rabbi Simon Jacobson. And Gary Milne says that God exists, and Rabbi Simon Jacobson says you cannot say that God exists.
Either empirical existence, extrapolated existence, perceived existence due to common experience, or the other ways I described earlier, some tool. An existence that just exists because it's real is not something that is in our scope. But we can extrapolate and we can figure.
He talked crap. It's beyond our scope, but we can extrapolate. If it's beyond your scope, how are you going to extrapolate if it's beyond your scope? That is just nonsense talk.
Figure it out by saying, since we exist and our existence must be dependent on something, then
the sun. See? Like I said before, worship the sun and everything will be cool, because at least you'll be worshipping the source of your life, just like you should be.
The one who
and I might add, the sun is not an idol. The sun is there. It's right there. It's a real thing.
Put it here must be existence that's not dependent on anything. And in that process, you can learn a lot about what God is like.
No. You still haven't said one word about what God is like. Not a damn thing.
And above all, is because that type of non-existential existence actually embedded within us different elements that we can also sense it. I'm going to give you an example. I don't know if everyone's following. Maybe I'm going over my own head and over everybody's head here, but let me say this. You know,
he knows he's talking shit. That's why he said that.
We value consciousness a lot. You know, if someone says, I'm conscious of something, I'm aware of something, it's considered a compliment, right? Whereas if someone says, I'm not aware, or the person is unaware or clueless, it's usually not a compliment. But I'm going to try to suggest that consciousness is actually not a positive, it's a negative. When you're conscious of something, it suggests duality. There's you and the thing you're conscious of. True experience is one that is so seamless and so much in the zone that you're not conscious that it's happening. And I'll give an example. Here. What is your left foot doing right now? So until I mentioned that, you weren't even thinking about it. You weren't conscious of it, but it was alive and it was functioning. Now that you're thinking about your left foot, does that make it more real? Or on the contrary, it makes it less real. Because let's say, what does health feel like? Someone says,
Okay, now I'm sorry, I just got to interrupt here. This guy is really talking nonsense. What is the left foot got to do with anything? The left foot is not God. The left foot is living, even though you're not conscious of it, whatever it's doing. It's there, it's still alive. And when you concentrate on your left foot, oh yeah, but then you don't concentrate on your right hand. So what is your point, Simon? And when you concentrate on your left foot, what about your right foot? Do you just not concentrate on that? Do you just say, I'm not quite sure what I'm trying to say here, but it's annoying when he says, well, let me try and get out what I'm trying to say. He says, until I said this, you're not conscious of your left foot. Your left foot was just there, you weren't conscious of it. But that's not true, because you're always subconsciously aware of everything. Okay? Your foot is going to react to a sharp jolt or a sharp or fire or heat, or extreme heat. All of a sudden, your foot's going to react and you're not even going to know about it. So, you got it all wrong, Rabbi. You go back to school, go back to kindergarten and start all over again. And don't go to that same cult kindergarten that you're now a big lecturer of in this cult. Go back to secular kindergarten and educate yourself with critical thinking, with common sense, with reason and logic, and you won't find yourself in a bind where you have to defend a non-existent God or creator and make these silly statements about how let me just go back up here. About a non-existential existence doesn't need proof. That's what you said. And that's idiotic.
It says, what does it feel like to be healthy? If you could describe what it feels like, you probably need a doctor. Because health is not supposed to feel like anything. It's not supposed to feel the blood rushing through your veins and arteries. Your heart shouldn't be felt. Health is a silent, a real healthy person is a seamless, silent experience. So sensation and consciousness is actually a little superimposed. Do you think, for example, you put a dry hand in water, so the dry hand gets wet. But does wetness get wet? Wetness is wet.
Silly, stupid. Wetness is wet. And this has got nothing to do with God. How does he convince me that his God exists somewhere by claiming that wetness is wet? You put your hand in the water, your hand gets wet, but is wetness wet? It's dumb. It's absurd. Who pays this guy for this nonsense?
So when we learn knowledge, we learn information. So before I was ignorant, now I'm aware of something. That alone indicates a type of superimposed experience. But when someone becomes completely integrated with knowledge, you become the knowledge itself. I don't know
Bullshit.
if any of you have ever experienced what's called being in the zone. As a writer, I can tell you, and this athletes tell this to you, that there's being in the zone. What's in the zone? That you're so immersed in what you're doing, you don't realize that you're doing it. You completely forget about yourself. You don't realize what time it is. You don't realize if you're hungry or tired. You're just like a channel. Everybody vies for that type of state. Doesn't always come. You'll hear it especially with experienced athletes. You've ever seen, for example, let's say the bottom of the ninth in a baseball game of the seventh game of the World Series, or the final points in a championship tennis match. You know, even watching it, your hands tremble. Imagine the person who's playing. How can they have that composure? Because years and years of conditioning and training prepare you for the moment that when you're in that type of state and you have the experience.
And years of conditioning and indoctrination has conditioned Rabbi Simon Jacobson to sit here and spew the pseudo philosophical nonsense that he's come up with in regards to proving that his God exists. In fact, he pretty much says God exists because God exists, and you pretty much have to. No, he said God is because God is, something like that. I mean, that's his best argument so far, and it's unconvincing.
You just get into that zone and you don't even feel what you're doing. Obviously, you're working with everything, all your instincts, but that is considered to be the most powerful experience in life. Love is that way, right? The deepest levels of sexual or love ecstasy is where you lose yourself and you lose your identity. Why? Because
What do you mean you lose your... Whoa. You lose your identity when you're having sex? It's part of your identity, Rabbi. Your sexuality is part of your identity. No? You don't believe me? Well, you certainly don't seem to believe me, because this is now the second or third time that you've mentioned sex in a very, very, very negative way.
The subject and the object melt into one. So Jewish thought, when it talks about, for example, Chet Eitzadas, the tree of knowledge, what happened when they ate from the tree of knowledge? They became conscious of themselves. Self-conscious.
Oh, by the way, he's quoting a book of fiction, just to let you know. I know these things.
Was born. Imagine a life where you're not self-conscious. Newborn children, young children, they're not conscious, not of their sexualdy, not of themselves.
See?
They just
it goes again.
Call to just be, not to do, but just be. A state of being. That type of being comfortable in your own skin, where instead of doing or acquiring, instead of a verb, you're like a noun, is the ultimate experience. Why am I saying this? Because this is a little taste of what the reality of what God is like. Everything in this world that we have is always, I'm reaching to this, I'm trying to find out that. You're trying to discover things. But there's a reality where it does not have necessarily any shape or form and not even a feeling. There's no sensation when you're in that type of zone. Like I said, when your body is alive, even if you're not conscious of what your left leg or right leg is doing, it's there. Who says consciousness is what defines things? This, in a way, is an expression, an experience that is somewhat of the way the divine essence works. It's not defined by experiences, it's defined by being. It's the ultimate state of being.
Silly claim, an ultimate state of being. What does that even mean? How can you explain that? How can you convince me of what you say, Rabbi Simon? Because you are failing.
Now, I know some of what I'm saying may be abstract or complex, or maybe it sounds gibberish to you, but I'm just trying to give a taste of some of the discussions, some of the more complicated discussions.
He acknowledges that he's talking gibberish, at least.
About the nature of God, quote unquote nature. Really coming to realize that the opportunity to meet God, the opportunity to understand what God is like, is really an opportunity to get beyond our limited horizons and come to realize that a reality that defines this reality is very, very different than ours.
Again, something that doesn't make any sense at all. It's word salad. He's talking about a reality that we live in, and then he's talking about a reality that God lives in. And he doesn't know what he's talking about. How can he know these things? He's just not talking nonsense because he's probably been taught these things, through generations and generations and generations, going back generations and generations and generations, and so that's the lifestyle that these guys lead, these cultists lead. They spread the lie from generation to generation to generation to generation. Just like that's what's happening here. He's expecting people to hold on to what he says and accept it as the truth when he says, God is God. God is God because God is God. God is real because he's real. That kind of thing. I think it's time that all this nonsense comes to an end globally. Just saying.
And in effect, when a person comes to that, they come to embrace truths and eternity that is very different than what our lives are like. Our lives, as I said, are defined by our experiences, by what we see, we hear, taste, touch, and smell, our needs, the perceived things we consider to give us value, and that's through acquiring things, wealth, possessions, and so on. In truth, reality is just the fact that you are. It doesn't require anything. It's just the peace, to be at peace that you are. This is a divine reality.
No, it's not. Bullshit. It's just reality. When you stick the word divine in there, you are giving yourself away as a charlatan. Because divine means absolutely nothing. Divine. You've not once. You've introduced the word, I will say that, but not once have you given some kind of clue as to what you mean when you say divine. Because divine, to me, is a word like, Christmas or Easter or resurrection or, just a stupid shit. Stupid shit, man.
But we are a created reality, and as a created reality...
We are not a created reality. That's a claim that you're making that is a lie. An absolute, specious, vacuous statement. A lie, to put it bluntly.
Everything is shaped and defined by limited experiences. So in a sense...
That's bullshit. Everything is shaped and defined by limited experiences. Do you believe that? Do you buy that? I don't.
In a strange way, when an atheist says, I don't believe that God exists, or God does not exist.
I'm an atheist. God does not exist. If anybody else watching live agrees with me, push 1. God does not exist. Push 1 in the chat. And then I'll carry on. There's only 2 people watching, so I should get at least one. No one's. All right, let's just move on. Hey, Tyler, thank you.
Should say, in a way, the atheist is truer than the believer that says God exists. Because when you say God exists, you're saying a God that exists on your terms. What we call existence, just like this table exists, God exists on a more sublime level. When someone says God does not exist, even though they may not mean that, but what they're really saying is that God does not exist the way we exist.
No. We are saying God does not exist, period. Okay? You got to get this through your head, Simon, that atheists aren't just denying the real existence of God. Atheists are telling you that God does not exist. Move on with your lives. Tell your cult to take a different turn, take a different tact. Change your mission statement. Make it work for something good. But you spreading all this nonsense over and over and over again is not doing anybody any good except for your cult. Because it's a business.
Now, I believe that if you're able to define God in new ways, like Levi Yitzchak Berditchever said, if you define God not in the way that was usually defined, like most people's knee-jerk and immediate reaction is a juvenile image of God. What is God? God is like this man sitting on a big throne in heaven with a long white beard or no beard, whatever, and strikes us with lightning when we misbehave. This is the God most people accept. Some type of like God that punishes, the judge, the one who watches everything. This is the God that we're taught in many religious schools and environments. That is a very juvenile God, and such a God, maybe Levi Yitzchak Berditchever and other believers would say, if that's the God you believe in, I also am an atheist. So when a person says they're an atheist or agnostic, it could very well be the God that they grew up with, they don't believe it. When Nietzsche said God is dead, and the joke goes, Nietzsche said God is dead, and God said Nietzsche is dead. But when Nietzsche said God is dead, he didn't mean God is dead. He says the God that was taught to us was never alive.
Bullshit. Okay, I'm gonna say a sentence, and you tell me what I mean. Here's a sentence. God is dead. Okay, now tell me what I mean. Do I mean that God is not dead? Or do I mean that God is dead? This guy is silly ignorant. That's how uninformed this man is. Silly ignorant.
Alive in the first place. We just discovered that he's dead. We discovered he was never alive. But if you were to define God as being the root of all roots,
you can define God how you like. I define God, and it wasn't accepted by Gary Milne when I defined God to him. He defined his God to me, and I didn't accept his definition. So God itself is just imaginary.
that if you cut to the core of all reality, you come to a reality that is beyond the reality we are aware of.
There's a reality beyond the reality that we are aware of. That is a bullshit statement, which should be stricken from the record. Court reporter, this witness is being highly nonsensical, and he's a master of gibberish. He's a word salad maitre d' chef.
A far different definition that many people would say that is intriguing, and I would embrace a concept like that. And you may not even need the word belief, actually, when it comes to that. Because it's really a logical process of realizing that it can't be that we're God, and it can't be our parents are God, even if they felt they were, and it can't be that the parents of our parents, it can't be the cause of the cause of the cause. So you come to realize that the cause of it all must be something that's completely different reality, and then you begin to taste what God really is and the value of God. Because who needs a God anyway that's just another extension of us? What is the point then?
All gods are imaginary. Your God, Rabbi Simon Jacobson, is just in your head. Don't think, or don't try and sell us that it's anything else.
Then it's just replacing, instead of worshiping myself, I'm worshiping something else that's like me, that put me here.
Why do you need to worship? Why? What is this need to worship? Do you have an innate? Were you born with a need to worship? The fuck is that anyway? Need to worship. What are you so guilty about that you need to worship to get your mind cleansed or something?
Is to come to realize that there's a reality that's very different than we are. And it's not just that God is eternal and we are temporary, and God is immortal and we are mortal. God is a different type of reality which dictates that he's eternal, that dictates eternity and immortality. And we are a reality that dictates mortality and temporary and impermanence. Now, of course, it needs a lot more elaboration of understanding this type of reality, but the first step is to not worship yourself. Don't think you have it figured out. That's the first step in really coming to understand what God really is like. And in that sense, as I said, an atheist who says there is no God, or God does not exist, the God that you've taught me doesn't exist, may be saying the deepest truth of all. It's exactly right.
Thank you very much. I am vindicated. God does not exist. The God that you're telling me about does not exist. That's what he said. He just admitted it.
That's not the God you want. You need a different type of God or a different definition.
Why do you need God at all? If there's different definitions and different gods, why do you need this at all? Why complicate your life? Just live your life. Enjoy yourself. Don't feel guilty about your natural human instincts. That's a ridiculous notion.
And in that sense, if you get that definition, you may discover that atheists are not atheists and agnostics are not agnostic. You know?
No, you won't.
I'll throw one more point into this. In the Talmud, there's a very strange Talmud that says that Moses, when he was up on the mountain, and God was reading with him the Bible, Torah. So in the beginning of the Torah, it says, "We shall create man in the divine image." When Moses saw the word "we," he said to God, "There's only one God. Why is there a we here?" Nasa. We suggest duality, which is going to allow people to think that there's more than one God, which is, of course, antithetical to the whole principle of God as one, which means really not only there's monotheism is one God, but one reality. So God's response was, "Harei tzalites yitter." The ones who want to make a mistake, let them make a mistake. What kind of answer is that? Why would you put a word into the Torah that allows people to interpret it in the wrong way? But there's a deeper meaning behind this. It means that God created an agnostic universe. And the Arizal, the Holy Arizal, explains it this way, that for independent reality like ours to emerge, that you and I can be sitting right now in this room and speak to each other as if we're self-contained individuals. And in our feeling, we feel like we're self-made even. Logic dictates that you had parents. Logic may dictate that God created it all. But what do you feel? You feel like you're an extension of someone else? You feel you're invulnerable and you're here. That's it. I'm here to stay. Logic tells you that it's not that way, but you're emotionally, you feel I'm here. So the Arizal explains it's a result of God having to concealing his presence. For us to be able to have an independent consciousness, independent individual ego, God concealed his presence to allow us to have our presence. It would be as if you have a dominant leader, a dominant teacher, who completely encompasses everything. There'd be no room for anyone to emerge. So God conceals his presence, which essentially means creates an agnostic universe where those that want to make a mistake can make a mistake. That's part of the plan. The part of the plan is that it is a concealment. Go back to Christopher Hitchens. A few days before he died, or a few weeks, he was asked by a journalist, "Since you're such an atheist, what happens after you die, you discover there is a God?" So his answer was, "I'll ask him, why did he conceal himself so well?" I would say a pretty good answer for an atheist, which means, if you think about it, that he accepted the concept that everyone, that maybe God...
No, I'm going to rush to Christopher Hitchens' defense. He did not accept the concept that God does exist. The concept is the concept. It's just conceptual. But Christopher Hitchens did not ever accept the possibility that God exists. No, never, ever, ever. Nonsense.
Actually did create this whole thing, but he concealed himself so well that you can convince yourself, or you can determine that you don't need...
That's stupid. Again, it's a stupid excuse. You don't have any evidence for God because God concealed himself. So an atheist goes to heaven and finds out that God was there all along, but he just concealed himself. That's stupid. That's absolutely... It's the word... It's dumb. Sometimes, have you ever noticed that sometimes I get lost for words, or I stumble over them, or I trip over my words? It's nothing new, folks.
There's no proof, and therefore maybe God doesn't exist. Maybe that itself God put into place. Now, of course, that throws a whole monkey wrench into this, because then that would say that actually every time we have doubts, that may be exactly what God did. And what are you going to do? If the Creator cloaked himself and shrouded himself and not allowing you to see him, or it, whatever, then what? So here the Kabbalah and Hasidic thought gives a whole eloquent explanation that though God did conceal and create an agnostic universe, but he didn't create an airtight agnostic universe, there is the ability to pierce the darkness, the black hole, the tzimtzum, and bring light. And that's why you see people make...
What is this fucking guy talking about? If you're following this, you're a champion, because I don't have a fucking clue.
Making choices where they say, you know what? I may not see God, and I may not be able to prove it.
Okay, so he definitely presupposes God no matter what. Okay, no matter what this guy says, he is presupposing God.
Absolutely. But I know that there's something there. And because I know there's something there, I commit my life to goodness and kindness, to live a divine life, not to give in to the temptation to not be accountable and not be responsible, even though that may be more comfortable, and to live even though I cannot see, but I can sense there's something beyond. And by living that way, that's how you pierce the darkness. That itself is how we bring God into the picture. And that's why the Medrash says on this verse that my holiness, God says, is dependent on yours. Because
my holiness is dependent on yours. Of course, somebody would have had to make that up and write it down. And this guy would be the kind of sucker who would come along and spread that kind of rhetoric. That doesn't make any sense at all. That is just plain stupid. This guy is a victim of ignorant thinking. Lifelong ignorant thinking.
I can't be holy unless you acknowledge me. That's the way I bound myself to this world. I've concealed myself well enough that it's you that has to bring me to the surface, and I will not do it. Because if I do it, then it loses the whole purpose of us being independent entities. So that's how Jewish thought, mystical thought, really explains the fact that this is an agnostic universe, and it's very easy for us to deny God, or even if you claim you're a believer, to live a life that doesn't always consistent to your beliefs. Why? Because the beliefs are in your mind and in your emotions and heart.
Ta-da!
What dominates? The reality of this material universe. But there's a deep sense in our souls, being that the...
He's made a very huge assumption there about souls. I have never ever sensed a soul, neither in myself nor in anybody else. So what is the soul that he talks about? Well, it doesn't exist, just like he's God.
Soul originates from God, that there's something more. And for some of us, it's more than just something more. It's really coming to a journey, a journey and a search, like Abraham, to come to realize that not only that there's something more, but that more is a reality very different than our own. And that's what I want to connect to, because that's real. I want to be able to recognize and come to an experience that is real because it's real, not because it's real based on my empirical and other observations.
You hear what he said? He wants to have an experience that is real because it's real, not because of my observations and empirical evidence that I can see. Again, it's nonsense. It doesn't make sense. This guy is selling you snake oil in a huge, huge, huge jar. 2 for the price of 1.
No, we don't want a God created in the human image. We want a human created in the divine image, which is what Abraham came to discover. We want to recognize that
human created the divine image. That's exactly what happened. You know, you're flip-flopping now, Rabbi Simon.
We want to be part of the whole, not that the whole should be an extension of ourselves. And that's ultimately when we say we worship or we serve God, which is, could be a turnoff. What do you mean serve God? Why serve God? I want to serve myself. You're not serving God as a slave to a master. You're serving a reality that's higher than your own.
Oh, you said it again. a reality that's higher than your own. That's a claim that he can never prove. So I'm going to file that in the garbage pile.
And in effect, what you get in return is you become an extension of that. So we have two choices in life. You can be dedicated to yourself and your needs. Then great, okay, you'll achieve as much as your needs and your demands require. Or you can dedicate your life to a cause greater than yourself. And if that cause greater than yourself is eternal and immortal and real because it's real and non-existential existence, then you become an extension of that eternity and that immortality. So the interesting twist is that when you lose yourself, you surrender your ego and your sense of control of what you think matters and what you think is real, and you surrender that to something much realer than yourself, which we call God, you then begin to be an extension and experience what that higher reality is like. That's what happens. You know, I have to share this. Years ago, when I started this class,
I don't think so. I think I've heard enough. I've had enough of this man. He's annoying me, and he's got to go. Bye-bye. Okay, let's go do the chat, because it looks pretty lively. There's a person in the chat who is either a troll or a very ignorant individual. And he or she has decided to use the name Christ brings a sword and introduce violence into his screen name, because there's no other thing a sword can be used for other than violent action. So this violent Christ guy has been mouthing off in the chat room like he knows something, and he's the one true proof that God exists. So I invite you, Christ brings a sword, to join the chat room, and let's hear your point of view, and let's see if you can take questions on it. I have the timer up there for 3 minutes, and that means that once I switch it on, you got 3 minutes for anyone to join the room. 3 minutes, and after that, if nobody joins, then that's the end of this this hangout. So you got 3 minutes, and I am going to start the 3 minutes right now. There we go. Tunes, people, tunes.
You want answers? I think I'm entitled. You?
Okay, I think I've had a change of plan. I will let this timer run out, and when it does run out, I am going to play another a Darth Dawkins humiliation video. Gary Milne humiliating himself, as he always does. And during that time, if you join, then we have an opportunity to carry on the hangout. And if not, that one will end it. But we started off with Darth Dawkins. We might as well end with Darth Dawkins. Gary Milne will take center stage in 30 seconds. Oh, that's nice. Good place to end, huh? I like that.
We got a new guy in the room. Evolution False, how are you?
I'm
no.
fine. Yeah, I was listening earlier. I had a question for True. You seem to have some problems with the biblical narrative regarding the flood. You were saying that the inbreeding would have occurred?
Nah, what? Why are we talking about this?
I heard you talking about it earlier.
I know, but we're on like something else.
Yeah.
Hold on. To atheists.
But to answer your question, more than likely, if there are more people on the planet, then yeah, they're more than likely going to be inbreeding.
Okay.
Are you basing that on personal? Are you basing that on current observations of near relatives
No, I'm
marrying?
But hold on. Before we go down that path, atheist and the perv. Who called it that would go from religion to politics?
What?
But to be fair, you said right after.
That was like ages ago.
I know exactly.
And God damn, I'm here fucking echo.
Yeah, who's that? Who's that?
I don't know.
Evolution False.
It's not me. I have my headphones in. So.
Yeah,
Here, let me mute real quick. See if it's me. Hold up.
Okay, so he's saying you're asking a question about mute your mic because your fucking echo is terrible. Or using earphones or
Stop
something.
muting, not me.
I know it's.
Yes, I thought it was you.
The evolution guy. You're asking me about.
I'm using a headset.
All right, well, cool. You're asking me about personal. This isn't personal because this is what is in the Bible. This is in the Bible. So like, okay, yeah, you do have to mute your mic. You're fucking something. Your echo or whatever. There you go. Thanks. In the Bible, it states that we go from 2 to 4 people, and then all of a sudden we have millions of people who begot this person, who begot this person. So it's not. I don't have any personal. It's just that's what the fuck it is. I don't know how else to look at it other than there has to be some kind of incest going on in some shape, form, or fashion if we did it that way, which I don't think that's how it happened based on how, I don't know, environment and adapting to one's environment works. I don't think that we'd be able to survive.
Well,
Not incesting like that.
Well, what would be the problem if after the flood, some of Noah's cousins married and progenerated? Why would that be a problem in your
That would
view?
be half of your problems. That would literally be half of your. Like, I wouldn't even be worried about incesting at that point. I'll be worrying about the more or less the overall environment and the condition of the environment, and wondering how things are even able to survive. Another point that I'd like to make. Yeah, exactly. Like, how the hell are they going to eat?
You can't eat the animals. You can't eat the animals.
Exactly.
There's only 2 of them left.
You can't eat the plants because the plants more than likely, you know, Yeah, more than likely they're going to be dead, and if they're not dead, they're going to be poisonous to defend against. Whatever.
I mean, you might be able to see creatures.
Well, I was just curious about what I heard earlier. You said that there would be some type of a problem with the interbreeding, and it seemed that you were referencing a problem with genetics. What were you referring to?
You would have a genetic bottleneck.
Was that your point, True?
Okay, 4 white motherfuckers didn't give birth to the world, nor did 4 black motherfuckers. So.
Well, how do you know that? How do you know that?
Are we really going there?
Well, if someone makes a claim, I'd like to know how they arrived at that.
Okay. All right, fine. First and foremost, you can't have fucking family members, okay, spreading this fucking. Okay, what's going to inevitably happen? Okay, have you seen American South? Any of that? Like, have you seen the deformities that happens with fucking families inbreeding? More than likely,
I'm quite familiar with that.
More than likely, they're not gonna fucking replicate properly. And what's gonna happen more or less is inbreeding is gonna cause deformities. These deformities are more than likely not going to be able to continue the human species for much longer. It doesn't matter what fucking 4 family members you start off with. They're not going to be able to continue on, breeding for much longer. It's going to cause more and less mutations, and that's not what's happening with the human species. If anything,
okay, my question for you is.
Hold on a second.
You've been talking quite a while.
I know, but I'm not fucking done explaining. So let me explain this, then I'll let you have the floor. All right. More than likely, we didn't come from 4 people. We came from more or less another species that formed a chromosome with another species, which formed us. In which case, those 2 species were already reproducing at such a rate that we are reproducing today. So I yield the floor to you now. You may ask your question.
Are you familiar with the concept of genetic entropy?
Oh God.
Do you know how that relates to the gene pool?
I honestly don't care because what the fuck point are you trying to get to?
Well, genetic entropy is the idea that as time moves on, generation after generation, small mutations creep into the gene pool. So
isn't that what I just got through saying though?
No, I'm not done yet. Okay.
Go for it.
Yeah, you did say good to speak.
Okay, so when you have earlier generations from a biblical model of creation, the original gene pool from Adam and Eve and his descendants, and even to Noah and his sons, their gene pool would have been in a more pristine state and had not been subject.
How do you know that? Just like you asked me that bullshit earlier. How do you know that?
Sure, I can know that because when God got done creating, He pronounced everything was good.
And you're still basing it off the no. Wait, stop.
No, I'm not doing this multiple people thing.
I know. That's why I wanted to be between me.
So you're asking me what my position is.
No, you jumped. No. Stop with your bullshit. You jumped down my neck.
Why are you being rude to me?
I'm not being rude to you. I'm very low tolerance to bullshit these days. That's all
okay.
that's about.
Would you like me to talk to you that way?
I don't give a fuck how you talk to me. This is a free country.
Okay, good. Okay. Yeah. Okay. So go ahead.
You're not making any fucking point.
Well, actually, I am making a point. What I'm saying is, in the biblical model of creation, biologically speaking, everything
that is
was
so fucking stupid.
Okay, good. Well, let me ask you this.
When did we go from living for 900 years to living for only 68 years on average for dudes? How the fuck did we go from there? Help me out there.
Okay. Do you think that the God of the Bible in creation, being that He is omnipotent, would have any problem in designing a world where people live for a long period of time, and then when atmospheric conditions change due to a judgment, people's lifespans would be reduced.
This is the problem with all this horse shit.
Well, I think that's a legitimate question.
Why would an all-powerful, almighty God even have to deal with these concepts?
Okay, well, you didn't answer my question. The question was, why would it be a problem for an omnipotent God to create biological species to live for a long period of time? And then when environmental conditions changed, that the lifespan was drastically reduced according to his plan.
Why would God sabotage his own plan?
Well, I'm trying to get my question out, okay? Now, I'll be glad to answer any of your questions that you put to me. Why? What I'm asking you is you're questioning.
I just asked
okay.
you,
Can I get my statement out, please?
No, because it's so fucking stupid. Just why would he sabotage his own fucking plan like that? That doesn't make any sense.
Okay. Well, can I get my
question? Oh, I want my creation to live for 900 years. Snap my fingers. No, I don't. This doesn't make any fucking sense.
Okay. So, why would that be a problem for an all-powerful God to create biological organisms to live for a long period of time? Why would that be a problem?
The Bible proves God isn't all-powerful.
Okay. Well,
why would he even need to drown the fucking planet? Like what? Oh my God, these people are fucking each other, trying to destroy this city with nukes. It doesn't make sense.
True. You objected to the very concept of people living for very long periods of time.
I don't object to shit. This is what's in your Bible. This is what's in your fucking Bible. I'm not pulling any of this out of my ass. This is what's in your fucking Bible. Anything that we're talking about right now in terms of like what God is doing is I'm pulling this shit from the Bible. This is what your fucking Bible says. Your fucking God, quote unquote, he fucking intervenes all the fucking time. Job. What was the fucking whole point of Job? To make a deal with the devil to, oh yeah, look at Job. Job is perfect in every single fucking way. You can't fuck with Job in any, no. And then you just start fucking with the guy for fucking decades on end. Hey, Joel, I'm just gonna start fucking putting balls all over you. Good luck, motherfucker.
Okay, so in order to criticize the God of the Bible, you have to hypothetically assume that he exists. So if you're going to judge,
good.
You
know what? It's based off the fucking Bible. Are you fucking stupid? I'm not like when I base Superman's powers, I'm basing it off of fucking comic book theory. It's not real.
Okay, Okay, true. Could you tell me, are you in a position? All right, are you in a position, given your worldview, when you evaluate the Bible, to determine what the actual nature of reality is?
Oh God.
No one could determine the nature of fucking reality if we're all basing it only on our five senses. We could be in the Matrix world, we could be in a computer simulation.
Then
we
how
don't
can
necessarily know. And another thing, in order to top that point, I'm not saying that there isn't a God, but with most atheists and agnostics, based off of the Bible, based off of this bullshit religion, dude, that's where the doubt's coming from. I'm not saying that there isn't a God who created all this shit. The problem is his theory in which you say he created this shit. I would say that this God is more or less like a scientist who understands physics beyond our comprehension. So I'm not saying that there might not be a God out there, but based on religion, based on this fucking antiquated horseshit argument you're trying to form based off the Bible, it's not working, and that's why I'm tuning you out, dude. I don't mean to be mean to you. I don't mean to be rude to you. Well, kind of. But I don't mean to be like super mean to you about this. It's just the fact that, dude, I've heard this shit all before. Okay, it's dumb. It's fucking stupid. Go ahead. I yield the floor to you.
Okay, so is your worldview and your methods of critiquing the biblical worldview fair game for examination, just as you examine the Christian worldview?
How about this? I've been a Christian for 25 years. Okay, most atheists and most people who don't believe in this shit anymore were at one point in time involved in religion. So what other world view are we supposed to get this from other than our own? Yes, more than likely, when I come across another atheist or agnostic person and we start talking about this, we're going to have a lot of different theories about what happened or what's happening in this book. But see, here's the thing. With two Christians, they don't know how to acknowledge that same thing. So when they read the same verse in the Bible, they'll give you entirely two different answers, but everybody pretends like nothing fucking happened. Oh, this is perfectly okay. But it's like you Christians have this set mindset that you have to think like this, or you're not a Christian, or you're not a part of this. And that's a lot of tribal groups in this world. Go ahead.
Okay, so what my question for you is, nobody is neutral when we come to these issues. We all come to the table with presuppositions. I do, and you do as well. Now, what in your view would enable you to rationally critique the Bible?
Okay, you're trying.
You know what? I didn't interrupt you the whole time.
I don't give a fuck. I don't give a fuck because this was exactly what you're doing. I'm seeing through it.
I let you speak for a long time. You're interrupting me.
The same fucking thing that you asked 3 times.
You are interrupting me.
What you're trying to do is you're trying to insinuate that I somehow have some sort of fucking authority over my world view.
I'm asking you a question.
And I'm answering your fucking question.
Okay, well, you're talking over me.
Fucking stupid. I don't give a shit because it's dumb.
Okay.
It's fucking
are you afraid to actually intelligently discuss this? Then why are you getting angry? Why are you getting so angry?
Ask it to someone else.
Seriously.
Seriously.
Because true. Never mind the other 8 people in this fucking hangout. It's what you said true. True. What you said bothered me. I don't give a fuck what bothers you.
No, I didn't say it bothered me.
You're
I was asking
about
you a
my
question.
worldview, and like you're trying to gear it as in my authority. I don't have any authority based on my worldview. You think what you fucking like. We all talk. If Atheist Ranger says,
am I going to get a chance to speak?
No, fuck you. If Atheist Ranger says something,
is that how you skeptics play the game?
Sure.
Is your position intellectually
If that's what you want to go
superior?
back and tell the Christians, go back and tell them that. That's not the reason why I'm cutting you off. The reason why I'm cutting you off is because you're just pure out fucking stupid. You're not making any sense.
Well, let me ask you this question.
Ask someone else then.
Is your position actually intellectually superior?
You've asked this question 4 fucking times already. No!
Answered, Darwin's asked and answered.
Thank you.
Was that Darwin's? Was that Darwin's?
Yeah, that was
Holy fucking shit! That was fucking. God damn it! Why didn't someone tell me?
That was the same clown that was in my.
I was saying that in the side chat there that this is DD.
Yeah, so was.
You should have spelled it out. Holy fuck! I probably would have been able to like plan better or something, or get myself ready, or strap in or something. Fuck, that was stupid.
Please tell me it's not him again.
No, that's a different guy. But he has multiple.
Hello, Gary Rhodes. How are you?
Did you see this? That was 4 fucking times he asked me the same fucking question. I'm like, dude, no, it's my point of view. If that's what you want to hear, it's my point of view.
And by the way, for those who are curious of what other accounts he has, that was one of them. Evolution Falls, Darwin's Deity. Then he has the.
Let me write these down.
Yeah, I better write these down too.
Yeah.
Duncan
Dawkins, Duncan Dawkins, Darwin's Deity, Evolution False, and George something.
Just write them in the chat.
There's two more. There's two more.
I can't do that again. I cannot fucking do that again.
Stephen J. Fould is another one. Stephen J. Fould and.
Yeah, the repeating himself. That's his little.
Atheist, is that why you were laughing over there in the corner because you knew who the fuck this was?
Yeah.
So you just
to be fair, I didn't know Anarchist told me.
Yeah, and I was wondering why.
Wait, you guys didn't know that?
No, I had no fucking idea.
Oh shit. Yeah.
I finally picked up on it after the 4th fucking time he asked me the same stupid question.
Damn.
You should have asked him.
I was
asking him questions back, and he'll just whine like a bitch and run away. Anyways.
I was really hoping that somebody was just gonna kick him out at the beginning, because although it was entertaining nonetheless, got my popcorn with me.
Yeah, I got my popcorn too. Like I kid you, I didn't know it was him until Christian Anarchist told me in the side chat.
Oh god, I'm glad everyone was fucking enjoying that. I'm glad you grabbed your goddamn popcorn. Now I gotta go to goddamn psychiatric evaluation. Thank you.
I'm very sorry. That was my fault. I'm very sorry, True.
True, if you need to talk to somebody, I will be here. And
his cock will be open and willing.
Hopefully, if the demon isn't doing anything.
It was like this is what it was like. It was like, don't get me wrong, the guy is smart, but
No, he
uses.
isn't.
Okay,
It's like a snake.
He
He's
uses.
not smart at all.
Okay, he has a very elaborate vocabulary.
Let's go with that.
Okay. I'll run with that. He has a very elaborate vocabulary. All right, that's very convincing at first, but then when you sit there and listen, it's like, no.
It's like you're impressed.
And it gets worse progressively. That it's like you're the frog in the fucking hot water, and you don't know it's hot, but like over time it's boiling, and it gets hot, and then you die. That's how people go crazy dealing with fuckers like that.